I'm Sarah Hickey and I'm a painter.
Hello and welcome to Art, the podcast where we get to know women from around the world of visual arts. I'm Chris Stafford and this is Season 3, Episode 12. My guest this week is the Australian painter Sarah Hickey, whose bold colours radiate through her expansive canvases, expressing an internal world of dreaming and reflection through her spirituality and imagination. We hear how Sarah's creative soul was evident in her childhood as she explored a range of visual elements from theatre to fashion and iconography. Sarah was born in Brisbane in 1975 and grew up in the surrounding area. She was educated at Queensland College of Art, where she earned a BFA in visual art and a BEd at Griffith University. Parents Eileen and Paul gave Sarah and her younger brother Sean the freedom to explore, which enabled Sarah to connect with nature in a spiritual sense, something that is constant in her paintings. While in high school, Sarah visited England, France and Spain with her family, during which time she became enthralled by European artists. After she graduated college, she spent time in Germany as a nanny, living her own version of her favourite film, The Sound of Music. Sarah was always drawn to teaching and has been a high school art teacher for 23 years. After her marriage to George Hickey, Sarah returned to her art and has participated in numerous shows and exhibitions and garnered several awards, including the Percival Portrait and Sunshine Coast National Art Prize, the Kennedy Art Prize, Redland Art Awards, and many more. Sarah lives in Brisbane with her husband George and dog Molly. Sarah, welcome to the podcast all the way from Brisbane, Australia.
Oh, hello. I'm so happy to be here.
We're thrilled to have you here because we've had a friend of yours on the show, Natasha Rushka.
I know, that's so lovely. It's such a kismet full circle moment.
Yeah, it is. And you know each other's works now, you've met, and you've, I understand, bought each other's work, which is lovely. I love that.
Yes. Yeah, it's lovely. The internet is such a small world. It's beautiful where you can reach out to somebody and then connect and then, you know, all of a sudden you have them meet you in the flesh. It's lovely.
I think I've mentioned to you now how art, this podcast, has kind of created a community of women, you know, who now start following each other on Instagram, and they visit each other's websites and get to know women, perhaps not just in their genre of visual arts, but well beyond. So I love that about the show. So welcome to the family.
Oh, thank you.
And well, we're going to talk about your family because you're from you're from an artistic family, aren't you? Some very talented people in your family.
Oh, look, my great uncle Jack, my dad's side, was a painter, and so he, as I grew up, he'd have a chat to me about his painting. And my granddad from my mum's side, he was very good with his hands. He worked on aircraft in World War II. He built houses in England and Australia, and he did things like decorate cakes. So he wrote poetry. He was a very creative man, and I think my gran and granddad were a creative team together. They were avid gardeners, and so they would do the equivalent of flipping a house that they'd rent in the 60s. Whether the poor owners wanted it or not, I'm not too sure, but they'd rent a house and they'd knock down walls, redo the kitchen, replant the garden, and then move.
Have you picked up any of those talents from decorating cakes? Can you sew?
I'm 49 years old, so I'm always looking on realestate.com and thinking, oh, I'd paint that white. I'd do that.
because your palette is very vivid altogether, Sarah. You know, I love the bright colours. You're very bold. What does that tell me about you? Are you very bold and colourful?
I think colour is used in so many cultures, and it's really interesting, the battle that I have with myself with colour, because I think sometimes to be serious and sensible, it's more tonal and restrained, a colour palette that's used. And, you know, as I get older, the colour palette is changing. But when I first started making art, it was really important to me to connect to those really rich, vibrant, primary colours that you do as a kid. And I think there's a kind of rebellion too, which I really love with colourful dressing, women over 50 really embracing, you know, the non-beiges and the creams, you know. It's like they're there in their full glory and they're embracing pattern and colour. And I see women in Africa and, you know, India, I mean, of all ages, just embracing colour in their culture. It's a joy, it's a celebration. And I suppose when I paint, there is a certain amount of joy and celebration that I feel when I'm having that conversation with myself. But, you know, I have been toying lately with the idea of restraining that colour to a certain extent. And maybe wouldn't it be interesting if I decided to do a tonal series of blacks and whites and greys, and what would happen then to these figures and characters that I have, archetypes that I create. So, yeah, it's an interesting area. I know the Australian contemporary art scene, you know, you will see a restrained colour palette for, you know, serious contemporary artists. You know, and yeah, there's something interesting. There's a push and a pull with colour and how it's perceived and how it's but for me, it's just a joy. You know, I see colour and there's an excitement and a vibrance, and for me, it just represents life. Yeah.
And are you so bold and daring then in your own choices of colouring and what you wear and your interior design? You talked about, you know, having the imagination of what you would do in houses. Does this colourful colour palette, does it spread to all areas of your life?
Well, really interesting question there, because I have always loved fashion. I remember, you know, drawing designs as a kid. And with my art, a couple of years ago, I created some colourful kimonos and some velvet capes and jackets, and that was so exciting for me. And I suppose I am known for dressing very colourfully when, you know, I'm at a show, etc. But I love being a chameleon. I don't love being stuck with that one idea of who I am. It's almost very theatrical. What role do I want to play today? And in terms of clothing, I love the idea that our plumage can really send a message. It can protect us to a certain extent. I often find that wearing very colourful outfits is almost like a protective. That's why I was really interested in creating these velvet capes, because it felt like you're a bit of a superhero. And you've got this sort of magical protective garment around you. If I don't want to be seen, I'll wear all black. And then I'll just slip to the shops and, sort of disappear. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to play with those ideas. As a high school art teacher, I love embracing fashion in that sense, especially for kids, because they're at that age that they're sort of not 100% confident in expressing who they are. And so I love being the crazy art teacher that comes to school in a nutty outfit. And they go, oh, my God, what is she wearing today? And so, without the suit and the tie and the conservative. So I think there's something joyous and really fun and actually a little bit rebellious about the way that you dress. And so I'm really interested in all of those things.
Yeah, I was thinking that this possibly is a rebellious side of you, that, you can
yes.
portray yourself in different ways. And it's almost, putting on a performance in a way. If you're going to an art show, right, you can be who you want to be. And I know that you express yourselves, in an internal world of dreaming and reflection. I think I read about you, with a complex layers of imagery and patterns.
Yes.
So you embrace all of that. And I love that boldness as well. But does that tell me that you are a very confident person, or does it depend on what you're wearing? Does that embolden you in some way, Sarah, depending on what you wear?
Oh, look, I've always loved theatre and, as a kid, dressing up and, pretending to be somebody else or, exploring roles that we play in life and personas. It's really interesting. I think, there's a tendency to think, oh, well, who really are you, But I think there's an authenticity and a heart in exploring all of these characters that I have within me. I mean, I don't need to see landscapes or still lives. There's enough material inside my heart and mind to last me 3 lifetimes in terms of getting to know who I am, who I'd like to be, who I've been, where I'm going. It's really interesting to reflect on this life and these experiences of who this flesh suit is, in this particular lifetime. And I think it's interesting. And I've just recently finished a self-portrait where I can see like I'm physically changing and aging. And it's really interesting to observe my external self and who I feel, who I am on the inside. It's only sort of just hit me in the last few years. It's that wonderful midlife, I think, reflection. And I'll continue to see myself changing, in an external sense, but also in an internal sense. And so there's always a tension between those things, I think. And I love creating these women, and they're usually younger, and they'll always reside in me. They're like friends or family or avatars or selves. And so, seeing them grow and develop with different animal companions, and then observing myself in my own life. It's all a conversation between spirit, soul, me, them, us.
I see an actor in you, Sarah. Did you ever think about doing this?
It's funny you should say that, but in high school, I applied for either doing acting or fine art. And we have a thing Australia. Oh, it's so classy. It's called Schoolies. So you go down to the coast after you graduate, and there's just a lot of young people at the Gold Coast, and it's a big party for a week. And so I went down there, and I had to audition in the middle of this week to apply for this Bachelor of Acting and Production. I was actually, as a kid, really interested in directing and creating, the visual side of things. But I said, Mum, don't pick me up. I'm fine. I'm doing fine art. Because I got accepted into fine art. So I thought, well, that makes up the decision. I'm going to be doing visual art instead. And so it's interesting how decisions are made like that. I think, too, I was more nervous about applying for that particular degree, and I was more confident, relaxed about doing the fine art degree.
You could have done costume design as well in theatre.
Oh, that was something as well. Absolutely. I'll leave all of these ideas to my next life, I think.
There's all kinds of options here, Sarah. Yeah, I love this. And, that you have brought this out in such a way in your painting that says so much about you, right? That's the fun thing about this podcast. We want to get to know the women behind their art. And already you've told us so much about, where this comes from, the heart and the soul of you, and that there is so much creativity in you. The possibilities are endless. I can see you wearing all kinds of hats, but the path you chose clearly has suited you very well. Obviously, you, as you mentioned, you went to Queensland College of Art in Brisbane, and then the Griffith University. You were born in Brisbane in 1975, and you've got your family all around you there because you never really moved very far from Brisbane, from the Gold Coast, from Queensland. And is that because you feel very strongly connected to your roots?
Well, interesting, question. With Brisbane, the Schoolies thing is on the Gold Coast, which is about an hour away, but I've never actually lived on the Gold Coast. But the Griffith University connection, QCA, Queensland College of Art, is Griffith, but also I did later on an education degree after I did a fine art degree. Brisbane. Now, no, I think in terms of travel, we did do a bit of travel when we were younger. So when I was 12, before my mum and dad split, Mum took us overseas because she's originally from England, and it was really important to her. I think they got married quite young, 20s, and when she immigrated with her family to come out here with Gran and Grandad, her sister and brother, they originally came out because my Auntie Anne wanted to be a nun. So they decided to follow her, and there was a good setup, obviously, over here. And then, so Mum felt a bit ripped away at 13 to move away from her friends and country. And so I think it was really important when I was 12 that, and my dad knew it was important for her as well, to go back home on her terms and really connect to her family and places there. And we got the opportunity, I think there was a deal at the time that we could go, if you got a Qantas flight to London, you can go to, Rome or somewhere else in Europe. And so we did. We went to Italy, and, my little 12-year-old mind was blown, seeing the statue of David and, Michelangelo's frescoes in the Sistine Chapel. And so, I think that experience of travel, I think we all got the travel bug there. But in terms of living in other places, really no. I mean, I nannied at a certain point in Germany for 8 months, 9 months, and so in a little town called Wollerstein. But I'm so cognizant that travel just opens your heart, your mind, your eyes. When I came back from that trip, my artwork went from small to big because I was so inspired by seeing that amazing imagery, and the feeling it had in me as a kid was just, I want to move people like this. Like, that's amazing visually, that you can do that. And again, mum's side of the family, my gran and granddad, they'd routinely, get a piece of land, build a house, and then sell it, and then go overseas. Not the greatest financial planners, but it would be a means to go again, and go back home and visit. My gran was Irish, so, they'd happily go back to the UK and Ireland and, do a round trip, 3 months, 4 months, and then come back and build again and do that. So I had a great opportunity at 12. And then again, when I was in year 11 at high school, Mum sold the house and we went overseas, really amazing trip. Paris and Spain and America, New York and Hawaii, and it was pretty decadent, amazing trip. So as a kid, like, those trips were incredible in opening my mind to different art, different ideas, different ways of being. And but in terms of living anywhere else, no, I'm such a Cancerian. I'm a crab. I need a little house around me and I need my little space, but I'm happy to go anywhere for any a length of time, and then come back and really gaze at my navel and think, wow, what have I seen there? How can I dissect what I've experienced?
I was just thinking, when you mentioned that your mum and family emigrated back then, I think it was like £1 a passage, wasn't it?
Yes, the pound. Yes, yes. I was thinking, what is it? Is it £10 pom or £5 pom? Anyway,
I think it was as little as £1 pom. I think it
a pound.
So yeah,
wow.
I think it was. If anyone's listening and had experience of this, please correct us. I stand corrected. But it was anyway very cheap, and it was encouraged. Obviously, they wanted to populate Australia at that time, in the 60s and 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, when you mentioned about your granddad on your mum's side, who he served in the war. So do you know anything about his family and his role in the war? Were you told stories as a child?
Really interesting. My grandparents were quite cagey. They're quite lovely. They were quite lovely, but I'd really ask them questions about how they met, and but they'd always be forward leaning. So they were, they didn't hold on to a lot. They constantly moved. They moved quite a lot when my mum was younger, and it was like, right, let's go. We've had enough. It's almost like, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a bit of Irish gypsy in us, because and it's so funny that I now live quite attached to my home and where I am. And so, it's interesting that they would move every 6 months or, every year, or it would be a continual thing. And I think Granddad, yes, he did work for de Havilland's, and and he had this beautiful boss, Bob, who, Granddad applied to be part of the Army or the Air Force, and he he kept getting rejected. I only found this out at his funeral, actually, 3 times. And he found out that Bob, his boss, they'd ring him and say, can you let Derek come into the forces? And he'd say, no, he's too valuable here. So we owe probably Bob a lot. I probably owe him my life, because who knows what might have happened if he'd, been in the forces, etc. So yeah, he was very clever with his hands. He never had university, education or anything like that. They were quite working class. Same with my dad's side. So he just was very clever with his hands. He could work something out really quickly. He could play the piano but never read the notes, but he could listen to something and then play it, So, and I think, he built a house called Gemador in England, and it sounded beautiful, and I've seen, some photos. We revisited it when we were in England when I was 12, but he just turned his hand to anything, and he could work it out. But he was a perfectionist too. So he, the darker side of being really clever at things is sort of not letting others in on it in a way. And he was a beautiful man, and I loved him dearly, but you wouldn't want to be his apprentice. It's like he had exacting standards of himself, and a bit of a perfectionist, and I think watching my grandparents, they had this really good balance between them. They'd obviously worked out, who was the chef and who was the sous chef, or who was going to make the decision on this. They really worked as a team, which was so lovely to observe as a kid. But in terms of, my beautiful husband, granddad, who's in his 80s still, was helping George, my lovely husband, put in like a roof sort of downstairs in my studio. And granddad, and George is a very patient gentleman. But granddad would sort of just take over. And, thanks, George. And let me do it. So, I think, there's there was a lone wolf in granddad very much in terms of creativity. And I suppose I've inherited that to a certain extent. I really, and going back to, could I have done drama, theatre, film, TV, perhaps, versus being a visual artist. What I really love is being on my own and not negotiating with anyone about what I'm doing. I don't even do commissions because it just exacts too much out of you. I think there's a really lovely, clear conversation that you can have visually, and it can wreck you, if you're trying to negotiate with somebody about that. And, I've only ever done commissions with people who have my work previously or really understand the process and are happy to let me go. So I suppose that stubborn, really clear streak exists in me with granddad. And what's great is I don't have to negotiate that side of myself when I'm inhabiting the artist.
Independent, creatively independent.
Yeah.
No, I get that. Just, we're still talking about your grandparents. I'm wondering, as often we bond with one of our, or more than one of our grandparents, was that the case with you? Because you speak so fondly of your granddad, Derek. On both sides of your family, were you particularly close to any of them?
Yes, absolutely. Look, my dad's side of the family, Nana and Pop, they were beautiful. They are quieter people. My dad is a quieter man, a private man. observant and reflective. I think and Dad was the first to go to university, very working class, humble, but loving. Yeah, I remember as a kid, like my nana showing me how to crochet, for instance. She was a great crocheter, and just quieter, loving, maybe not so demonstrative verbally. So, maybe the I love yous were sort of less. I mean, not from my perspective, but you absolutely knew you were loved and supported. And, I think same with my grandparents on mum's side. I saw them very much. They were very much around as I grew up as a teenager. Mum and dad split when I was 12. So there was lots of stuff that mum was exploring in her life during that time. And so, there was a bit of, we'd see dad every second weekend and stuff like that. But our grandparents, our nana and pop and my gran and granddad were just constants, really beautiful, loving. I mean, to the point, mum's side, gran and granddad were possibly at times, they'd ring every week. You'd see them every week. I know that mum speaks about when, I was first born, they'd be very practically helpful. So mum adored being a mum. She really loved, just sort of rocking in the chair, in love. She, really in love with being a mum. But gran and granddad would clean the house and do the nappies and do that sort of thing. So we're really lucky, my brother and I, to have those beautiful souls in our lives. And though we didn't see Nana and Pop, we'd see them every year at Christmas, and I always felt a kindness and really listened to us and really honoured who we were as becoming people.
Well, you mentioned your mum Eileen a few times. She was very creative too, and interested in the amateur theatre and wore many hats through her life. What kind of relationship did you have with her as a child, and how has it evolved as an adult? How would you describe it?
Lots of fun. Mum growing up was a fun mum. Mum, I think they got married quite young, like in their early 20s. And I think, part of that time and place, what you did was, Mum very clever, very creative, but sort of left school in year 10, got a secretarial sort of job with the law courts and different things. And so Mum has always been a rebel and a little bit of an explorer. And so she just couldn't wait to get out of, even though she loved my grandparents, they could be controlling, I think she was keen to move on and create her own life, and so met and fell in love with my dad, and so I think, and then quickly became, a parent, a mother, 22. And I think back to who I was at 22 and I go, Mum, I don't know how you did this. And Dad, similar age. And, as a kid, I remember this place in Algester, which was out in the sticks, in the 70s. And I remember it, of course, because I was there until year 3 or whatever. I remember it being huge. And I actually drove out there to have a look at it. And it's this one, level, little small brick out in the burbs, dark brick, And it was just, I had so much compassion and love for my parents just starting out, you know, two kids in the cul-de-sac in the 70s. And it's just, you know, making the leap of faith. I mean, George and I had to talk about the possibility of getting a dog for 2 years, maybe 5. And so I can't believe the courage or just the blind positivity that everything's going to work out. It'll be fine. And so I think my mum, yeah, very creative person, but, you know, 2 kids, young, really, you know, when I got to 12, really exploring, who am I? I don't even actually know who I am outside of these roles, I suppose. And so, yeah, I think she went on a bit of a journey and, yeah, with who am I? What do I want to do? What am I good at? I mean, Mum has been so many different professions in her life. You know, she's a taxi driver. You know, she worked in schools. She very involved in amateur theatre when she was younger as well. And I'd go to the plays and love it, you know, seeing her perform. She'd direct a lot. And she was a great director, really engaging and encouraging. For me, as a little artist, very encouraging, very, oh, that's amazing, you know, wow. You know? So really, I had this benefit of Mum really supportive, and luckily my parents are really, I mean, my dad's an accountant, so different sort of animal, but I think in a different life he would have been maybe an author or, you know, something like that. But I think, you know, growing up working class, there's sort of so many choices you have. And, yeah, I mean, financially, both sides, you know, not particularly flush. And so, yeah, I think there's been a lot of growing. I really admire my mum for, look, there was an unstable period, you know, as I grew up as a teenager, but she's really done a lot of work on herself and reflected on who she is. And I've come to a point in my life where I admire her a lot, and my dad. I have a lot of love for them. I think, you know, in my 40s, I sort of needed to explore, you know, all of that stuff, dealing with, you know, childhood and perhaps some things that weren't so great. But now, as I am on the edge of becoming 50, I really appreciate their journey and for giving me life and for giving me this beautiful life, you know. So I stand on their shoulders.
Now, who was it that encouraged you with crayons and the early start of your artistic life? Was it in school or was it your parents encouraging you at home?
Well, funny, I was saying this to my husband last night. I've got the earliest memory of getting a packet of sultanas, you know, those little sunbeam sultanas, and pushing them onto the wall and being fascinated by this sort of independent little sultana, and then you apply enough pressure and it sticks to the wall. and then creating a pattern. So there's this earliest memory of that. And I'm sure, I mean, obviously there wasn't anything traumatic happening after I did create this masterpiece of sultanas on the wall. Otherwise, I would have had a trauma. So obviously Mum was okay with stuff like that. I think Sean and I, luckily, we weren't really packed with our schedules growing up as kids. So we we had a lot of free time. And so we moved from Algester and we went to acreage. So five acres of land. It was a bit out in the sticks in the 80s. So in that sense, we had a horse next door and we were really given a lot of latitude. We didn't have piano lessons and then we had to go to swimming and then it was like, okay, go off and entertain yourselves, So I remember pretending to be a teacher, for instance.
That's where you got it from.
That's exactly right. There was always one kid, Johnny, in my imaginary class that was really naughty. But yeah, lots of play. My brother and I would be on our BMX bikes and sort of pretend to be. Sean would go round the house and then I'd pretend to be the petrol station attendant, things like that. They'd go, fill her up, mate, fill her up. So lots of play and lots of time. In terms of art, I think for me it was a lot of material play. I remember mixing consistency of wet and dry sand in our backyard and noticing that when you mix those consistencies, you get this fluffiness. Things like this that I think is the artist in all of us, having these experiences of going, isn't that interesting? So when you mix that with that, you get that. And so that curiosity. And then I suppose when I went to primary school, I had lovely, beautiful, creative teachers that just, I adored my teachers that were very much musicians or artists or dramaturgs, in their own lives. And they encouraged us as kids, especially primary school, but then again, high school as well, and really encouraged us to play, which I think is the basis of all creativity.
Did you get a chance to visit galleries and museums with your parents?
Yeah, well, I think not in a Brisbane context, but when we were younger, born into the Catholic Church, what was really interesting for me was that was my first foray with art. So I'd stare at this really amazing statue, large statue of, the Mother Mary with her veil, blue veil and robes, and then she'd have this serene expression on her face, and then she's got a bare foot and she's stamping on a snake that looks quite aggressive and mid. So things like that fascinated me as a kid, all of the iconography. When I was at primary school, there was we were lucky enough. He's now a practicing artist. He was associated with the church, and his name was Russell, I think, and he created these paintings that he'd put behind the altar, of Jesus on the cross, and he'd do quite a realistic. So it was quite heart pounding for a kid to see. This sort of imagery. And so, that absolutely, my house is filled with iconography, although I wouldn't classify myself as a Roman Catholic now. I'm more a New Age spiritualist. But I've got, I love iconography. There's something really interesting and iconography from many cultures. I really dig it. My husband's a pure atheist, and bless his cotton socks, we've got the Last Supper above our bed because it's this beautiful vintage. It's this beautiful vintage image with that's on mirror, and I just fell in love with it. I had to have it, but poor George, he's sort of I don't know about this, okay.
Of all the paintings that could have been in your bedroom.
I know. Well, I'm a maximalist, if you couldn't tell from my
Yes.
work. So it's like a salon hang. There's nothing, I will squash as many pictures as I can on the one wall, and further. So
I'm bound to make reference to Frida Kahlo.
yes.
I know that you're a big fan of hers. I've just finished her biography, which was riveting. I highly recommend it if you're interested in Frida Kahlo's work. And, of course, so colourful. You know, you mentioned there that you're now more of a New Age spiritualist. I mean, all of these things sort of come together, don't they, to make us who we are, and in our iconographical imagery that you do so well. And I'm wondering how spiritual you feel that you are now as opposed to when you used to be as a young artist, budding artist. Has that spiritualism grown in you?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Because, look, as a young person, you make things and, you know, I always felt this confidence. I don't know why, maybe built up in life, but I never felt scared about making. And I see as a teacher, kids scared about even doing a line, drawing a line. And for some reason, and I think it was that encouragement of all these lovely souls around me, but I never felt scared of having a go visually. And I felt good at it. I don't know why, but I felt like, oh, yeah, I can do that. I can knock that up. And so in terms, then I went from, you know, all girls Catholic school to art college. Hey man, woo, you know. So nobody was checking up on me. I was experimenting, you know. I was cutting up sex dolls, putting them in baking trays and pouring resin on them. I was putting bicycles in kilns, you know. I think that material play that I loved as a kid, I really went crazy at art college, but I had no real sense of why I was drawn to create or why I wanted to create. I just followed. I didn't even think about, well, what are you going to do after this degree? Like, you know, you'd see mature age students and they'd be very clued on. You know, they've saved money, they've worked, they're going to use this 3-year degree to really push things in their direction. I was just bumbling along, and they told us when we first went to art college, look, you're probably too young for the degree if you're here straight from school. You really need a bit of life experience. And I agree, because it can rip you to shreds when you're a burgeoning artist and you get critiqued harshly. I mean, I had many experiences, you know, that ended in tears because I really didn't know what they wanted from me, because you're pliable at that age. You want to please. But the other thing is I really didn't know why I had this language or wanted to explore it. And so I really had to disconnect with it for many years. You know, I thought, right, let's get sensible about life. I nannied overseas. That's my husband. I'll turn him off. And then I, decided, right, I've got to get sensible, did an education degree, went out and taught full-time for 5 years, and then got married and then read this book. And if you haven't read this book, here's the big plug. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she's a New York-based writer who really wanted to write a book about unblocking artists, because she really believes that everybody's an artist and that we're all creative and it's accessible to everyone. And reading this book was just, she gets you to do exercises, etc. But it was a real revelation to me after sort of really not practicing myself, thinking, oh, I need to get back to that. I need to get back to that. And when I did, that's when the spiritual connection happened. And that's when I said, this is how it makes me feel. This is me having a conversation with me. This is a meditation in action. This is when you paint, there's no other thought. There's an excitement. I find a little internal excitement. Doesn't need to be shared with anyone, about tomorrow, about the future, about, oh, I've got this to finish. It's a purpose. And I found that spiritual connection that she talks about really, it resonated with me very strongly. And I thought, this is why I do it. And I think that energy or that vibration translates into the paint. I think people in your energy tribe connect with your work and feel what you're feeling. And I've seen it, early in my career when I was sitting in the gallery with my own work, and people would walk in, and there'd be some people who'd walk in, check it out very briefly, and then walk out absolutely unmoved. And then you'd have somebody who comes in and stares at a piece and cries. So I think there is this vibrational connection. I think it's always going to be relevant, with the introduction of AI, etc. I think, I'm going to go overseas this year and I'm going to go to the Van Gogh Museum, and I might cry. It's that connection with the physical piece. I could see a print all day long of his work, but to see it in the flesh, I think, is a conversation.
So when you go into the studio, is there a transition to get into that space where it is meditative, it is soulful, it is just you and that canvas? And it's a transition then into your own universe, if you will, with your art. Is silence better, or can you somehow put music or podcasts or whatever it may be in the background, and it is very much background? How does that headspace of yours change? I'm very curious as to what that transition is for you. And is it an undisturbed space? Do you put do not disturb on the door when you go in there?
Well, when we did the house reno, 3 years ago, we renovated the house. So we lived in the studio downstairs. So we were all cramped, and boy, I adore my hubby and I adore my dog, but I kicked them out so quickly. I said, get out of here. I need to paint, but yeah, interesting. And I have forgotten to give you my playlist. I'm so sorry. But originally, look, I have lots of fun. I've got daggy musical playlists. I've got lots of joyful, the Cat Empire and, joyful music as well. And really, that's been going on. But lately I've been getting into the podcasts. What I find is I need a bit of rev up music to start a painting. So really to rough it in, that's sort of the energy that I need to bring to a new canvas. In terms of the hard yards, like I'm a bit of a hedonist. So I went and did a painting course down in Sydney at the National Art School, and the tutor, it was just for a week, paint like a Dutch master. I thought I'd go crazy, but she was brilliant. Anyway, she could tell that, second day in, she said, that's great, Sarah, but you want to eat all of the dessert before you actually eat the main course. And so I said, yes, I do. And so the hard yards, if I have a face, if I'm doing portraiture and I know that I need to get a likeness, for instance, I need to strap myself in, and there is a different mentality there because so a podcast or something where you can zone in and just go, you know what, we're going to be here all day and we're just going to work on this eye and this cheek. It drives me mental because there's an internal battle happening that really wants to, with a big thick brush, go nuts, and so I usually start that way. I love starting paintings. Finishing them, yeah, not so much. But, so there's I suppose, like a journey in that painting process. So the first layer, chucking that paint down in texturous, strokes, fabulous, bring on the party music. But then, strapping in to resolve a piece and letting it sit, having the patience to let a painting sit and stare at you it can take 6 months. I did a portrait of my brother, which if you added up all of the hours that I actually spent on the canvas, not a great deal. But in terms of, he was in my studio for a year and I kept side-eyeing him, waiting for the wave, waiting for the next clear move of what to do next. And I suppose there's painters who say you got to get down to the studio 8 a.m. every morning and you got to work hard. And I'm definitely not one of those. I like to catch the wave. I like to feel intuitively drawn and also be really, really good to myself when I just don't feel like it. I think, I feel the call to you need to go and fill your eyes with something today. I even did it. I took myself to the movies last week. I saw The Salt Path.
Oh, yes.
And I just felt like seeing those vistas. Like I really wanted to see the Cornwall, Devon.
You wanted to go back to England.
Yes. And so I really wanted my eyes to sort of be taken somewhere else. And I suppose that's why I love film and TV, and because you can drink in another space without sort of buying the air ticket. Yeah.
I'm wondering what people say about your artwork, Sarah, that, if you're eavesdropping, you mentioned, the different reactions, physical reactions to people coming into a gallery, into your show. But I wonder what feedback you get or what you hear if you're eavesdropping about your work.
That's so interesting. Well, it's a difficult one because I think it's a visceral feeling. People are either going to get it or they don't. And when they get it, it's so wonderful to hear the connection that they made and how it made them feel. That to me as an artist is full circle. And I think the art life can be up and down. You sometimes question, what the hell am I doing? I don't understand. And then you get somebody, well, even listening to Natasha on the podcast the other day say, hey, actually, my artwork somehow reached out in the ether and grabbed Natasha enough to write to me and connect. And there's such magic in that. And it makes me feel in those low moments that you naturally have in a creative life, it makes me feel like, that's why you keep going. That's why you do it. And I think it's magical. It spurs me on. When somebody hands over their hard-earned cash to have, your vibration, your work in their house, and they find different things with it. It's really magical, and it's the buzz. Even though, there's a side to being an artist. You want to be taken seriously. You want to win awards. You want to be seen as a serious contemporary artist. And there's all of those icky attachments associated with that. You want to do well in the field. You want admiration and respect from your peers. But actually, at the end of the day, that connection with other people it's huge. It's everything. It's, and I don't paint for others. I paint for myself. And then when I do that and there's this magical life or connection that happens outside of me once it's finished I love it. It's chills, it's the best.
Yes. You said what I was thinking just then, Sarah, that this is about you. This is why you don't need commissions, because this is coming from so deep inside. It is about, you expressing yourself. So when you go in the studio, is that work or play?
Probably that I'm going to spend all day on this eye and cheek is possibly on the edge of work, but my God, what good work is it? I'm in my studio and I can, decide to work when I work. I've got a cup of coffee. I've got my dog near me. I've got an exceeding freedom with what I do. Financially, it goes up and down. Hey, universe, bring us some more of that cold hard cash by all by all means. But at the same time, there's this. It is play. It's absolute play. If I know when I get too serious about things, and I do get too serious about things, I do want many things. I've got many dreams for my art. And so sometimes that can get overwhelming, and I know other artists feel it too. And you get disappointments too. Just yesterday I got rejected from a comp that I got into last year, and you go, bum and bugger, and you feel a bit down, and you take the disappointment like an arrow, and you go, but you get tougher, as you, the more years that are under my belt as an artist, and I think there's this constant breaking down and building up, so there's the disappointment, what am I doing anyway? And then there's a, hang on, do what? And then you paint your frustration, you grow bigger. I think sometimes these beautiful female forms, these souls that come through, are my cracking bigger emblems. They say, keep going, we're growing, we're growing stronger and larger. And that's why I like to paint physically large. It's a dream. It's a reach. You reach for it, and but at the end of the day, it's got to be play. You got to go. It's the artist is an inner child. It's a child that usually gets ignored, and you need to coax it out with beauty and play and fun. And lots of artists use different ways of doing that. Collage I find is absolutely sensational with getting something quickly, composition quickly on paper and letting your little artist out. You don't have to draw properly or do anything proper. It's a play. And I think, it's really important that we all get in touch with that, actually, because I think it makes us healthy.
And you spend some of your time in the studio and some time as an art teacher. You've been a teacher now for 23 years. This is something that is very much a part of you. Clearly, it started when you were very young as a teacher. You picked up the vibes back then, it seems. So is life like a nice balance for you now to be as creative as you need to be with your studio space and as an artist, a professional artist, and then sharing that with the next generation?
I really love it. I love it so much. Working with teenagers is the best. They're sort of looking for, they're growing up, they're starting to sort of stretch their wings, they're starting to sort of question who they are, and they're trying to find their way as a little individual, and I love being there for that. I love seeing that. And you especially see it in the arts and in the visual art classroom. And I love, of course, they're starting to rebel. They're starting to find their little way in life. I really love it. And you've got different stages, of course. I teach year 8s who are at the beginning, really, of their high school. And then I teach year 12s who are just about to go out and fly. And it's so lovely to see the differences in that relationship. It's such a beautiful balance. I get inspired. There's usually conversation between what's happening at school and what I'm doing in my practice as well. And even when I have a challenging lesson, I'm thinking about yesterday in my beautiful year 8 class, there's an intensity in me, for them to succeed as well, and for them to know how beautiful their marks are as well. I think in a primary school context, sometimes sadly, if kids can't draw realistically, they internalize that and go, "Oh, I'm not good at art." And then when they come to high school, I say that is sensational, because a kid will knock out a Picasso-esque, just free from any restraint or what's proper in inverted commas, and it's an uninhibited drawing. It's an uninhibited line, and it's delicious. And I go nuts about it, and they go, "Settle down, miss." It's like, it's okay. But I love seeing their growth and their development. Look, there's really, I really believe we're all artists. And you say to a 3-year-old, "Can you draw Santa on top of a fire truck with a horse in the background?" The 3-year-old would look at you and go, yeah, no worries. And then get a piece of paper and do it, and that connection to visualizing something and just drawing something. It might not look realistically like Santa Claus on top of a fire truck with a horse in the background, but happily and proudly they'll show you and go, "There you go. That's what you wanted." And whereas you'll ask, maybe an adult businessman in his 50s, "Can you draw a version of this?" "Oh, I don't draw. I'm not an artist." And I think it goes back to caveman times. You draw things in the sand. You make a mark. It's your mark, and it's important that, there's such a thing as skill development and all of that sort of gear, but ultimately it's your beautiful connection to something external. So you've brought the internal external. You've made the internal external just by drawing a line. It's beautiful. I love it.
That is a beautiful description. I love that. Thank you for summing it up that way, teacher. We could all recognize that the inhibition of art. Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Sarah, thank you so much. This has been great fun getting to know you. And I think what you've shared with us really completes the picture for us of the person that you are, and how it comes across in your art. And this is only your first career. I think, you can go into costume design, you can go back into acting. So we can expect absolutely everything, anything and everything from Sarah Hickey. Long may the creativity continue.
Thank you so much, Chris. I was like, a little bit on edge and nervous coming in, but you've just put me completely at ease, and I've really enjoyed the process. And thank you.
We look forward to continuing our conversation. Don't forget to join us over on YouTube now, because Sarah and I are going to hop over there and talk about some things we didn't have time for here on the podcast. So don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The Art Podcast, The Art with 2 A's, of course. And that's where Sarah and I are heading now. So again, thank you very much, Sarah, for being on the podcast this week.
Thank you.
Remember to scroll down the show notes where you'll find links to Sarah's website and her social media, and also to our social media. You can find us on Instagram at The Art Podcast. That's art with 2 A's. You can also reach us via email if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions. That address is theartpodcast@gmail.com. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please do leave us a 5-star rating and review, because that raises our rankings amongst all the other thousands and thousands of podcasts, and therefore helps others find the show. And you can also leave a review on Spotify. And don't forget to hop over to our YouTube channel, The Art Podcast. Again, that's art with 2 A's. You'll find us over there with lots of videos, and particularly this new after show where you'll find our continued conversation with our guests, and you'll hear stories that you didn't hear on the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel while you're there. My thanks again to my guest this week, Sarah Hickey, and to you for listening. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time when we'll get to know another creative woman from around the world of visual arts.